Morning all. Now I'm a criminal lawyer and I've been practicing in Porirua from the same office for about the last 30 years. My work ranges from between jury trials and youth court work. When Wendy spoke to me and asked if I would come along and have a talk, she suggested obviously it be about the interaction between poverty and crime, intergenerational poverty and crime. But I've thought about what since she gave it to me, what I might say, and I've scribbled down some notes this morning. And I think I'll just focus on youth court work. My client base sort of runs from Tawa in the south up to Waikanae in the north, mostly Porirua City, Titahi Bay. The ethnic makeup would be Pākehā, Māori, Pacifica in the main. Hard to say what the overall proportions of each would be. In youth court, I'd say it's probably about 80% Māori and Pacifica. Porirua is a gang town. In gang town terms, is a mongrel mob town. And the generations in some of those families sort of turn over every 14 to 15 years. So you have grandparents aged 30. And I've been a lawyer for some 3 generations for a large number of those families. So what I'm about to tell you is entirely anecdotal, and it's my impressions. There'll be no nasty numbers or statistics. Youth court deals with 14, 15 and 16-year-olds. Most of you will probably know that the heart of the youth court system is the FGC, the Family Group Conference. When a young person admits to the court that they've committed a crime, a CIS person who's called a coordinator has to organise a meeting. That's the Family Group Conference. They try to get along as many of the young person's family as they possibly can, a victim, police officer, and me, or another youth advocate, a lawyer. We're all put together in a room and we try and come up with a plan. The focus is twofold. The first is to try and make the young person accountable, be responsible for what they've done. So that's probably the criminal justice side of things. The second and the far more challenging part is to see what you can do to help. What's required, what's needed to see if you can stop another family group conference happening for the same kid further down the track. In general, the categories of what you can do are not rocket science, pretty easy really. How are they doing at home? How are they doing at school? How are they handling drugs and alcohol? Who and what is their peer group? And that pretty much covers the basis, really. Some general observations about the young people and their families. Most are financially poor. No question about that. Either unemployed or very low wages, call centres, a lot of cleaners. The more family you have at FGCs, the better outcome you get. That's another observation. It's very rare not to have large numbers of family members at Pacific Island family group conferences. For a lot of Pākehā families, it's just one very tired-looking mum and maybe some younger siblings. For Māori families, there's a greater range of variation, but usually there's more than just the nuclear family. In all groups, particularly Māori and Pacifica people, there are often no fathers, probably mainly no fathers. Sometimes, when you have their fathers who live away from the family can be brought along to the family group conference, it's usually helpful to the outcome. Almost invariably the kids aren't going to school or they're truanting. They're abusing drugs and alcohol. They used to do other stuff like sport before, not anymore. and they hang out with like-minded peers all night long, get up really late. The crimes are generally assaults of other young people, usually from the same milieu, stealing stuff from cars and homes, usually in their own neighbourhoods, or if you're unlucky enough to be in their path when they come to town on the weekends. Mostly it's items to keep for themselves, cell phones, other desirable items that teenagers want, or to sell for drugs and alcohol because they've got no money. The mongrel mob families are particularly dysfunctional. Some of them have been there since when the car factories came along to Pororua, about 70s. And so we've probably got 4, 5, 6 generations of same problems in those families. The current generation, to me, seem to be even physically affected. They are smaller than their parents and grandparents. Again, this is entirely anecdotal. Combination fetal alcohol syndrome, poor diet, particularly when the mothers are going through pregnancy. And you can see that sort of in individual cases when you have a young female, young person who's pregnant and trying to stop them from smoking or trying to stop them from drinking seems to be nearly impossible. Does the youth court work with these kids? I think so, and I can only talk about the Pororua area, and my answer would definitely be a definite yes. Like in most areas of endeavour, there need to be both systems and, most importantly of all, by miles, good people. For a start, you need a resident judge. That's one that sits in the area all the time rather than just having a newbie on a roster every week. And that's for obvious reasons, so they can get to know the kids, get to know the families. And once they've been a resident judge for a few years, their job is much easier. They can encourage family members to come along to court, watch the follow-up process. And really importantly, as any good parent would know, is you need them to hold the line. When you are making rules for the kids when they're in youth court, bail conditions, curfews, non-association clauses, firstly, you've got to be careful. You've got to know your kid a bit when you form the rule. You don't want to lie down on the tracks for everything. And they're the ones that deal with them on a daily basis. They're out on the street, meeting them when they're pissed and angry or crying or vomiting. They know where their homes are. They take them home in the patrol cars. You need a well-resourced police youth aid team. We've had all of those in Pororua for quite some time. A bit worried about resourcing on police youth aid at the moment. We might be starting to go backwards. You can't turn the personnel over every 12 months or so and expect to have success. You need SIFS coordinators. These are the ones who organise the meetings. And they're probably the linchpin of the system. They're the ones who've got to get on the telephone and ring up victims. You know how you got your son got smashed by, come along and meet him. You've got to ring up other family members when you've got mums who no way in the world is that bastard and his family coming to. So you need really good coordinators who can get the people along, do the work, preparatory work before the meeting and after the meeting. In my area, we've had a Maori guy and a Samoan woman, 20 years. They know everybody. Social workers, This is probably the least successful part of the team. For whatever reason, they don't stay, and that's another story. They turn over 6, 12 months. Sometimes you have, and you never have enough. For every social worker, you seem to have 9 middle management supervising them. And all of these people need to work collaboratively. And lastly, you need lots of patience. Largely, we all see we've got them for 3 years, 14, 15, 16, before they suddenly either sail or disappear into prison. Now, back to you, Wendy. That was a very well organised little focus for me. So the main obstacles, it seems to me, in dealing with the drug and alcohol issues and getting the kids back into education. Part of the problem is getting their families to support these objectives. You know, for example, while most families can see and are really concerned with their teenagers' drug and alcohol issues and want them to stop, the elephant in the room always is the family's own drug use and use of alcohol in the home once the kid goes back from having been told about how detrimental it is. Secondary schools are quick to suspend or expel problem pupils. Families in the past, this is improving, don't generally have much of a connection with the school or know what's going on, aren't drawn in. And also the lack of achievements usually occurred long before secondary school, usually at the primary or intermediate stage. On the plus side, all the stats show that in Pororua and nationally, recorded youth crime is going down, it's plummeting. And my own experience tells me that that's not just due to police massaging statistics, although there's always an element of that, but the system works. If everyone plays their part. 3 things Wendy suggested, see if you can think of 3 things you'd do to improve the system. I'm going to come up with 2. Education would be another one, and you'll probably speak about that after me, but that's a big subject. But just 2 practical things you could do is mentors. Probably the best thing you can have for a young person is a mentor, and the more hours the better. There are a number of organisations out there. Some social workers try to do that, but their caseloads might be 30 kids, 20 kids, so you're only going to get an hour or 2 at a time. Te Raupu Awhina, there are various organisations out in the community, but 5 hours a week's not going to do the trick. If you can get a mentor who can get to the stage where they can actually get the kid up in the morning and out the door, help them perhaps liaise. The first speaker, you were talking about all these government agencies. Again, you don't want a counsellor for drugs, a counsellor for grief issues in the past. You want it in one person, so I'd like mentors. Would be great. Drug and alcohol. It's nearly impossible to get any kid whose situation is so bad that they need residential treatment into residential treatment. And that has been the same for the entire 30 years that I've been in this field. There's been no improvement at all. It is nearly impossible. What I'd like and say the Pororua area could have been one of the old Pororua hospital buildings when they downsized that. You'd only need about 15, 20 beds. It needs to be close to their families so their families know what's going on. So those are the 2 things I'd do. Thank you.